Hey, Shannon, have you heard anything lately?
You know what, Tanner? I have.
What have you heard?
I heard that you can email your questions, your comments, and your show title ideas to poppetscorner@gmail.com.
Are you telling me that our fans can actually be involved with the show by submitting their questions, comments, or show topic ideas to poppetscorner@gmail.com?
That's right. Poppetscorner@gmail.com. That's spelled POPPITTS corner@gmail.com.
Submit your emails now. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Poppitt's Corner, a big special one today, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 150. I know I never get to say these things on the air, but this is episode 150 as of today. But I'd like to bring on very special guests here, Mr. Angelo Espino of Heretic and Vermin and LSN, a bunch of killer bands, and of course John Cochran, not OJ's lawyer, of Vermin, and also a bunch of killer bands, which we will get into. But gentlemen, thanks again for coming on and hanging. I appreciate a moment of you guys' time, man. It's gonna be fun.
Glad to be here, man. Yeah, thank you.
It'll be exciting. I think what I'm gonna try to do here is find out how you guys linked up. So I kind of obviously I've gotten Angelo's story once before. But John, I'd like to start with you and just get your specific kind of journey documented. So if you don't mind, I'd love to get started and just tell some stories. So where I'd like to
how we met.
Well, where I'd like to start with this, and we'll get to how you guys met, but where I'd like to start with these particular episodes is can you give me some of your first kind of recollections of just hearing music for the first time and kind of what were the bands that did it for you?
Sure. So in the early 70s, I had a friend at school named Mark, and his brother was in the Navy, and he was stationed over in Vietnam because the war was going on. And his brother would go into the city like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, I don't know what it was called back then, and go to the flea market and buy cassettes, real cheap. They were like a nickel for a cassette. They were bootleg cassettes that they had made off of LPs. And he would ship his little brother, who was my friend, boxes of tapes. So every few months, he'd get this box of tapes, and it was like kids in the candy store. We were so excited to see what was in these cassettes. Well, there was a cassette by a band called Black Sabbath in one box, and the Edgar Winter Group, and Deep Purple. And I'll never forget that day that we popped those tapes in and listened to those three stand out the most as far as like getting me into hard rock. Because I was into pop music and like soul music and stuff as a kid. You know, stuff you hear on the radio, because that's all you got. And here we got this box of tapes with all this never heard anything like that before. Heavy music. So that got me into heavy music.
Sure, go ahead.
Then in I think it was 74, I was watching TV late at night, and the California Jam, the first California Jam was being televised. And I saw Deep Purple and saw Richie Blackmore, and that was it. I told my mom, "Could you buy me a guitar?" And she did, and I started taking lessons, and off we went.
Now, when was the point when you started to discover heavier kind of bands outside of the Sabbaths and Deep Purples? And I'm talking into, I don't know, the Van Halens, even stuff getting into the before, 1980, 1981, essentially.
So the guys I jammed with in high school turned me on to UFO and Old Scorpions with Uli Roth, Tokyo Tapes. We used to listen to that all the time. So I got into UFO, Scorpions, that kind of stuff in high school through friends. And we would jam on that stuff in our little band. We had a little band in high school. We'd play parties and stuff like that. So that's what we were focused on. And then Van Halen, they were all over the radio back then. I mean, I can remember the first time I heard them, and had to go buy the record immediately because I'd never heard anything like that or anyone play guitar like that before. It was amazing. So I had all these influences coming in. And then in 1979, I'm glad I remember all these dates, a friend of mine called me up. He said, "Hey, I've got tickets to see this band called Judas Priest at the Santa Monica Civic, 14th row, right in the middle. Do you want to go?" And I had never heard of them before. I said, "What is it?" And they said, "Oh, they're crazy from England, and they wear leather, and I'm like, oh, I got to see this." And were you at that show?
I strangely was at that show.
Were you at that show? We didn't know each other yet, but we were both at that show. So, and
the stars were starting to align.
Yeah, the planets are getting closer. So I was completely blown away. I'd never, holy hell! I mean, a full Priest show, Halford on the motorcycle, So that was when Unleashed in the East album came out, or Hell Bent for Leather, both about the same time. So they're supporting in tour of support of that. So that got me into Priest. So I bought the album Stay in Class, which has a song called Exciter, which I'm sure you know, which has that fast chugging rhythm, that you really got to be on, you got to palm mute. So in learning to play that song, I developed my right hand to play thrash. But I hadn't heard playing thrash yet because it didn't exist. But I was ready.
So that would have been on the Killing Machine / Hellbent for Leather tour, I believe.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. So immediately after this concert, you start to get into Priest and buy some of the records and whatnot. When was the point when you took it a little bit more seriously and developed your first band? And did you start to notice more musicians around your specific area playing this style of music?
Well, I got I'm trying to remember. Probably the Recycler. You probably have heard of this. What that was all about back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. It was like a newspaper of classifieds, and there was a big music section. And I think I was in a band called Hans Crypt, believe it or not, before Vermin formed. And it was just a bunch of guys jamming in a garage in Torrance at the time.
Does Vincent know that?
Yes, Vincent does know.
Yeah, just making sure.
And we were just jamming on covers. So like Scorpions and UFO, the same stuff, Montrose, that sort of stuff. So I had bought good gear. I had a Marshall half stack, 100-watt half stack, and a Strat with a humbucker in it. So I was ready to go playing that kind of music. So I was jamming with them, but nobody could write a song. Nobody could do anything original. There was no original coming out of it. So I had the bug to do something original because I'd been going to clubs in Hollywood and seeing original bands, and it's like, this is what I want to do. Then the fateful day, the most fateful day was Thanksgiving night, 1982, at the Troubadour. There was a band called Metallica that had claimed to be the fastest, heaviest, loudest band in America in the ad. So I had to go see what this was all about. Because I'd never heard of them because they didn't have a record out. I mean, they're not on the radio. Nobody knew who are these schmoes, these yahoos. And I had never heard anything like that. Half of their set was covers at the time. And this is when Mustaine and McGovney were in the band. So I got to see the original lineup when they were really rough. They weren't tight, But their original tunes, I remembered them the next day. I remembered Jump in the Fire. I remembered that, Seek and Destroy. The next day I'm like, they were stuck. So like these guys know how to write a hook. They know how to write songs. I remember Am I Evil? They played that. That was a cover. So, but then I was inspired, like, I got to start writing stuff like that. And I immediately set that in motion and started coming up with riffs.
Now, was this right before Metal Massacre came out? So they weren't even on Metal Massacre yet.
Yeah, there was none. That stuff wasn't even out yet.
Gotcha, because I think that was 82, if I'm not mistaken. But I didn't know if that was before or after the show, so I didn't.
Yeah, Brian Schlegel was probably there taping everything, as he always did. I don't know. I don't know the exact date. So if you'd have to get on the internet webs and see if Metal Massacre came out before Thanksgiving of 1982, but it was Thanksgiving of 82.
I believe
I thought Metallica.
I believe it did, because I believe the Metallica wasn't even a band when that specific thing was recorded. So they was just like they got it done really fast. So I think you probably saw the start to some of their first early shows, especially in LA County. So this is again way before they discovered that San Francisco loved them even more.
Yes, exactly.
Now, can we go back just even a couple years before, and when were you aware of the Sunset Strip and just how much influence that Van Halen specifically had on it?
Mid 70s, so I was still in high school, and I was lucky enough to be able to go to some of the clubs a couple times while I was still a teenager with friends and see some bands. I didn't see anybody back then that you would probably know or that would be notable or that stayed together. Until I was probably when I was about 19, 20 years old, I started to go and see bands like Snow, which Carlos Cavazo was in, who later went to play in Quiet Riot. Stormer was another band around then. Remember them?
Mm-hmm.
A la carte.
Yeah, a la carte. Yeah, Motley Crue. I went to a lot of Motley Crue shows at the Whiskey. They were just a lot of fun to go see. Stuff like that. So, but everybody was copying Van Halen as much as they could. All those guys were.
And when was the moment? So you said you were in a band called Hans Crypt, and I know that band particularly still plays occasionally and whatnot.
They're,
so
they're
still,
a doom band now.
Correct. So I guess what my point is when was the moment when you decided kind of to start the next project and you said you wanted to do more originals with this? Did you, again, how were you finding your musicians?
Okay. So I was looking at ads in the recycler, the people looking for a guitar player, and I ran across an ad and they said, looking for a guitar player that is familiar with the NWOBHM, New Wave of British Heavy Metal, which I was because I had already had the first Iron Maiden record and with Priest, so they kind of counted as that. So I responded to the ad, and it was a couple guys that lived in Manhattan Beach. It was a bass player and a drummer, and they invited me over for a jam. So I learned some songs. They said, "What do you want me to learn?" They said, "Learn these Iron Maiden songs and something else, an Aussie tune or two." And I went over and jammed with them. We just clicked. We had good chemistry, and the bass player Dean was really into Motorhead already, and he was hanging out at Oz Records and scouring the import bins every weekend already, so he was plugged into that. So he kind of showed me what that was all about, and he loved thrash and fast music, and he liked punk rock too. So we started writing originals, and that was probably in really late 82, like right around the first of the year and the beginning of 1983.
Now, immediately after this, was it more important for you guys just to play shows, or was it more important to have like a demo to promote before even playing? Because I've just always been curious when it comes to bands in the 80s. Did they focus more on just playing shows instead of like?
Well, here's the interesting thing. So the way the whole scene worked back then, the clubs wanted to book anything that was bringing bodies in the door. They're all about bottom line and making money. So you would see, like I remember seeing the tail end of the new wave happen in Hollywood, when you had bands like Great Buildings and I can't remember some of the other ones, the Knack, right? This kind of stuff. I saw that fade out. And then I saw this hard rock, this kind of cock rock thing, Great White. They used to be called Dante Fox, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Striper, who used to be called something else. What were they called?
I just remember Striper being Striper, but
no, they had another name.
Yeah.
Oh God,
I can't remember what it was. Them, this kind of like they all wanted to have the singer look like David Lee Roth, right? That kind of stuff. So I saw that, and then Motley Crue, the glam, and all that morphing. So the clubs are just packed with that. They're recycling they're all recycling the Whiskey, the Roxy, the Troubadour. They're all playing that stuff. And then thrash started, and they took notice. And if you just said I have a thrash band, they would basically book you. So we did not have a demo. We finally got five piece members all together, another guitar player and a vocalist, and started writing originals. And had probably 6 or 7 songs. And I will tell you the absolute true story. I remember how it happened. Our bass player, Dean, went to high school with a girl named Anita, and Anita was friends with Brian Slagle.
Anita Kovacs.
Anita, yep. And Anita talked to Brian. Brian says, I'm putting together this thing at the Troubadour. It's going to be called Metal Mondays. And the first one's coming up. And we need one more band to play, to open. And we have two other bands on the bill. One of them Slayer. And the other one was, I can't remember. Do you? Anyway. So we just said, sure, we'll do it. Fuck yeah, are you kidding me? So no demo, nothing recorded. We had only played 2 live performances at that park, Normandale Park in Torrance. And maybe one party, one backyard kegger. So that's it. And then next thing we're playing the Troubadour.
Interesting.
On Metal Monday with these knuckleheads called Slayer, who turned out to be good friends of ours eventually, but it was fun. So yeah, and it was packed. The place was absolutely packed. And of course, Brian Slagle was there taping everything, as he always was, with his big tape player. So that got the club's attention. Like, it's Monday night, for fuck's sake, and this place is full. Like, what is this all about? Thrash. What's this thrash all about? So then everybody wanted to book thrash bands. So once you'd had cred, you had the credibility established. You played the Troubadour, right? Easy. That was our ticket. And people like, that girl who was friends with Brian. And Brian was really propelling so much of that scene. I mean, it would not have all happened without him. I really don't think that.
Fun fact, Anita Kovacs and Ronlafitte were high school sweethearts.
Oh, interesting.
You know Ronlafitte?
I've heard the name sounds familiar. I thought he was like I might be confusing him with the disc jockey guy that played up in the Bay Area.
So Ronlafitte was Heretic's first manager. Then he went on to manage Armored Saint.
And Megadeth.
And then he went to manage Megadeth and then Metallica. Now he's like the president of, he's like the fucking president or vice president of whatever label. This is like a fucking huge label.
He's a record company.
Like a Warner Brothers or
he's a big wig. Yeah.
He's a suit. I think he started.
Come to me.
He started selling merch for Metallica or something, maybe. I think that's what it was. But he wasn't a musician. He didn't play. But
so
he was involved in a lot of that stuff too.
And what was the name of this project you were in?
Which one?
The one that played the Troubadour.
That was Vermin. That was Vermin.
Vermin. Okay, so Vermin immediately came after. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I let the Hunt Script guys know I was going to go do my own thing, and I formed Vermin, and we had an artist do a logo and our mascot, which was the bat, and the name came from the first Mad Max movie. If you've ever seen the original one with Mel Gibson, there was like a burning truck, and there was a big thing that spray painted said the vermin shall inherit the earth. And I saw that, and I thought, that'd be a cool name for a band. So that's how that happened. I'm
surprised the name didn't get taken years later, too.
There have been several vermins all over the world.
So immediately after this, when do you guys start to record and want to be put down on record, per se?
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
Well, Greg Chikalovich, who was the other guitar player in Vermin, had a friend named Brian Foxworthy who was a recording engineer at a college. Do you remember what school that was? Somewhere in Harbor City, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Harbor College.
Harbor College. So he was the engineer at the recording studio at Harbor College, and he could get a studio time for free. So on the weekends when the school was not in session. So we agreed this is a good idea because it's free. Now we had to just buy the tape. And they had all the mics and cables and everything, so it was great. So we went in there and hammered out, I think, 5 songs that never got released. You can find them on the internet if you look hard, but it never got released. So the reason we were doing that, because Slagle wanted us to put a track on Metal Massacre, which we agreed to do, and also if he liked the way it sounded, to do an EP on Metal Blade.
And none of that ever happened, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. So,
no, and there are reasons for this. There is a reason, and his name is John Cyrus. Do you know who John Cyrus is?
Yes, he's his own worst enemy here. But
he is,
yes.
and he was our own worst enemy. But he's a phenomenal singer. So after we parted ways with our original vocalist Vince, we were on the search for a new singer, and Cyrus had just been parted ways with Abattoir. So he responded to our ad. We had an ad in the Recycler looking for a singer, a thrash singer. And Cyrus responded. He knew of us because we had been playing around already. We had played numerous gigs by then. And he came out and auditioned. And how could you not like that voice? I mean, geez, my God, it was amazing. Being in a band with that guy, as annoying as he was an incredible singer. But he just drove the band apart with his personality, and and the thing that sucks is that the whole thing fell apart right when we were ready to make the record happen, because of him.
How is that possible to where you can't regroup and just do it instead of like
you would have to know him personally.
No, I'm talking about you guys personally. Like, so you lose the singer.
Mm-hmm. Well, they got a new singer, and I had enough. So Mike Torres stepped in to sing after Cyrus left, and by that point, I was just so burned out I couldn't do it anymore. I see. I had three years invested in this thing, and it was just I couldn't stand the lead singer merry-go-round anymore. And in hindsight, Greg and I should have sang because we could both sing.
Oh, okay.
We should have done what fucking Mustaine and James did,
Well, both of those guys were looking for singers too, and then they got fed up with it.
Exactly, it's the same thing. Exactly. Did you know John Cyrus? He actually sang with Megadeth for about a month.
Oh, I didn't actually.
Yeah, it never did any shows. It was all in the studio, and him and Mustaine didn't. Not
did you guys ever tour with Vermin, or was it only LA shows?
We did lots of shows in LA, and I only played one show with them in the Bay Area. But after I left, they went back up to the Bay Area and played a few more shows. They played Mobway Gardens, and they played Ruthie's and the Stone. Without me, I was not involved in those, but I played one show with them at Ruthie's. And that was a show. Exodus was there to see us. That was kind of cool.
So, can you give me that story? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Did you do that show with Possessed?
I wasn't on that bill.
Oh, okay.
John was not there for that one.
Okay.
They did. Yes, they did. There's actually, you can find that on YouTube. There's audio of that recordings of that gig. That was Vermin, Exodus, and Possessed.
That was
Slayer.
That was the one at the Stone.
I think it's Slayer too.
Yeah, that was the one at the Stone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So give me that story. How did that whole thing get booked? Because you're an LA band essentially going up to the Bay Area for the first time. I'm sure you had hardly any connections. So
no connections.
Did you go ahead?
We knew Metallica had moved up there for a reason. I mean, they must have gone up there for some. They must have something going on. Those kids, that Danish kid rather, he's pretty smart. That Lars, like, what are they up to up there? So the same thing. Look at this. Look at those clubs. If you've done any of your homework, which I know you have, you know that those clubs, Ruthie's Inn was a African American blues joint. That's what that was. And Mobway Gardens, wasn't that some kind of a Pacific Islander
something like
thing?
That,
was a tiki bar or something?
I'd say probably closer to a tiki bar. Yeah.
But everybody's trying to book thrash because it's bringing people in and making money, right? So our drummer Mike had somehow he masterminded booking that. I don't know how he did it or who he called, but he just said, "Do you want to play in San Francisco at this place called Ruthie's? All these thrash bands have been playing there. Metallica's played there. Slayer's played there. Da 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 da." Like, sure. So we rented a van and went up there and played. I think it was a Saturday night. It's Friday or Saturday, I can't remember.
And that whole environment, though, how is it different than the LA crowd? And can you give me just like, I don't know, the feeling of going up to a place that you've never been before, first time ever? It's like, are you scared shitless? Are you just excited? I mean, is there a lot of people?
A lot of adrenaline, and it was super exciting because the other guys drove up, and Greg and I got to fly up because we had to work. So going to the airport and like getting on a plane with no luggage, no nothing, like all our gear was in the van. You know, we felt like badasses when we were sitting there and we both ordered a drink. We're like, dude, we're on a plane and we're flying to play a show. Like, this is so fucking cool. You know, that was awesome. But the people and the scene up there was totally different than LA. I mean, can't even compare.
How was the initial response for you guys personally?
Oh, great. I mean, the crowd loved us. It was fantastic. They were all headbanging, you know, they're maniacs. They're absolutely out of control. I'm sure you've seen those old videos at Ruthie's of Exodus playing where people are bouncing off the fucking walls. You know, it was great. So we played our asses off. Exodus was there to see us. Those guys were super cool. They invited us to crash at their house if we wanted to spend the night, not get back on the road, which some of the band did. A few of them, I had to get back because I had a wedding to go to actually that weekend. So Mike and I and John Cyrus drove back in the van, and then everybody else stayed in San Francisco and partied with Exodus for a while. But one of the coolest things about that night was Gary Holt said, hey, man, we finished our demo. Do you want to listen to it? I got a cassette. Come out to my truck. So we all huddled around the cab of Gary's truck, and he put in that tape, and Kirk Hammett was on it. The other guitar player, he had just left. And he was just cursing James and Lars. He's saying, those fucking guys, fucking Lars James, stole my goddamn guitar player. He's just so frustrated. And the demo was killer. It was great. It's like, holy shit, man. These guys are like, this is a real thing.
Yeah, see, that's something to try to find.
A Million Miles, the original Exodus demo with Kirk?
Yeah.
Is that it? Do you have that copy of that? Is that
I don't even have a copy of the MP3s of that, let alone a fucking cassette. So here's a question for you guys and whatnot is why not have that? Because you had a great reaction in the Bay Area, and I'm just curious why you were frustrated even after that. I mean, I would have just tried to gone up there and played as much as I could.
Right. They did after I quit. What happened in LA? I got to tell you what happened in LA. So, like I said, flavor of the month. You got the New Wave, you got the cock rock, swagger guy, David Lee Roth guy looking dudes. You got the glam thing, Motley Crue and Rat, that came and went. Now you got thrash. But what was going on then is in the early 80s, punk rock was really crazy in LA. And there was a lot of violence at shows. You probably know about this, right? People getting beat up and just bad. Cops coming and just crazy shit.
I think our friend Diego Negretti wrote a song about that.
So some of the clubs wouldn't have anything to do with punk rock. And the Troubadour was one of those clubs. They would no punk rock, no, none of that. They don't like that shit, right? So part of the thing was, like, a lot of our friends were punks and in punk bands. Like, I lived in a house with people that were in two other bands, which were both punk bands. And we all got along really great because thrash and punk rock, Jeff Hanneman was way into punk rock. He had a lot of friends who were punks. So what happened was punks started showing up at Vermin gigs. They weren't causing trouble. They're not doing it. They're just rad, man. They're cool. But the club owners didn't like that. And
they freaked out because they saw the
right.
fucking, Liberty spikes.
Right. Somebody showed up to one of our gigs with a mohawk. And the booker said, "You're not playing here again."
Again, I would have only used that as fuel for the fire just to fucking go to the Bay Area.
Yeah, I know. You're right. So Metallica was smart. They smelled that skunk early, and they got out of town. So that's what happened. So now we can't play the Troubadour. The Whiskey was closed for a while. So now we're starting to play punk rock clubs. So now we're playing the Cathay de Grande.
And Gazzari's started to not exist. just in the fact that well, no, back then, yes, Gazzari's was still around.
But that was all cock rock.
But you remember Bill Gazzari's, if you're not good looking, you're not playing.
He said, ain't nothing but foxy guys on my stage. They ain't foxy, they ain't playing my club. It's like, no.
We just got pushed
shoved down. So we had to play
a lot of the smaller clubs.
So we played punk clubs. So we were playing at the Cafe de Grand, Madame Wong's,
the one on Melrose, the Anti-Club,
stuff like that. So now it was really weird because you're naming lights on Santa Monica Boulevard on the marquee, and now you're not allowed anymore. And now, coincidentally, right about this time, what's happening? Who moves to town? Assholes named Poison and another bunch of assholes. Who are those sons of bitches? Janie Lane. What band was he?
Warrant?
Yes.
Warrant,
yes. So Warren and Poison had just come to hit town about that time. And the clubs did the same thing. They start those guys out on Monday and Tuesday nights. If they pack the place, they move into Fridays and Saturdays. And those guys were the new ticket to, selling out the clubs. So Flavor of the Month, Rash, Slayer's not playing those places anymore. We're not playing those places anymore, But
if you were fortunate enough to be around our age back in those days, as short as the metal scene was, I mean, as in and out of like the limelight, like I said, the big clubs, the Troubadour, the Whiskey, so on and so forth. The Starwood before it disappeared. It was a lot of fun. I mean, like no matter what club you were at, or shit, you could be at one club and someone would be at another club, and you're like passing each other on the street. You just knew everybody. The scene was incredible. And I'm glad that me, him, and a lot of people, half my bandmates got to live through the early 80s heavy metal scene, and like you said, the changes that it went through, but it was just an incredible unity of brotherhood, And I feel like I sound like Caton on stage right now, but it was just like a big giant family of music lovers, musicians, non-musicians. It didn't even matter, Yeah, it was just the best of times. Anyway, sorry about that rant over.
No, that was a good sentimental rant. It was a good sentimental rant.
Hang on.
So I would like to move to a different kind of aspect of LA in general, and just there are a couple clubs that again, I know the names, I know some stories. I've interviewed some folks that were a part of those days. I think Angelo was there when I interviewed one of them. But I would like to talk about the Country Club and the Waters Club. Yep. So how did those play a part in music in general around LA area? Did you start to see more of the heavier bands playing outside? Because I'm sure they played outside of LA, with the heavier bands.
We played the Waters Club several times. That was a fun venue. It was weird because they had a waterfall behind the band, which was just weird. And then the bar came out from the stage, so you couldn't get right up in people's faces, down on your knees, The bar was like a horseshoe. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And we weren't allowed to walk on it either, so we had to stay off of that thing. So you had this distance between you and the audience. It was a little bit off-putting, not as intimate as other places.
Yeah, years later they moved it to the back, but yeah, it was the weirdest thing. Is so the bar was always packed, I suppose.
But it was a fun place to play. It was a big venue, a big room, nice dressing rooms, nice. They took care of you. You got food, comped if you're playing. I think we always got paid, so that was a good place. And then the Country Club was where everybody wanted to play because that was a stepping stone. That was the next bigger venue. So if you had played the Troubadour and the Roxy and the Whiskey and you were at that level, the next level was going to be the Country Club. And that's where everybody wanted to be. And that was what the last gig that Cyrus was working on before we parted ways was he was trying to get us on the bill with Anthrax. at the country club, which would have been a phenomenal gig to have on my resume to play with those guys, which may have been their first time on the West Coast. I'm not sure. I'm guessing probably.
Fuck, I was in a band with the brother of one of those dudes, and I never got to play with him, so
Yeah.
you didn't miss anything.
So the country club was the next, that's a stepping stone. And then after the country club, then you're going to do Perkins Palace, places like that. And then Santa Monica Civic. And then hopefully you're signed and you're on the road by then.
And Angelo, help me out on this one, but I'm curious where she's a very famous promoter. Her name was Gina Zamparelli. And I'm trying to remember with the club she used to book. And I'm curious, even before. So, what were some of the bands that played the Waters Club and the Country Club versus the Sunset Strip? I'm sure Dark Angel did not play the fucking Cat House or something, or any.
No.
You know. So, I'm curious what kind of bands were playing outside of LA in general.
A lot of punk bands. So the Waters Club had a lot of punk bands. Tons of classic throwdown punk rock shows there. There's an airplane. You know, you must know.
Back in the early days.
You know Alpine Village, right?
Yes.
Okay, Alpine Village used to do shows. A lot of punk rock shows, too. So any place that had punk bands, thrash was welcome. But I never played at Alpine Village.
No, actually, it actually turned in. Well, Alpine Village was great because the stage was huge. They had a bar, even though, back in the day we weren't old enough to drink, but getting a drink wasn't a problem. It was all these really, cool German beers, whatever. But they used to, but it was mostly like local bands, oh my God! Think of some punk bands from back then. I'm trying to like 3 O'Clock was a Hermosa Beach band, and
Black Flag, Red Cross,
Black Flag,
the Alley Cats.
Yeah, they were all South Bay. The
Minutemen,
Hermosa, Redondo.
The whole San Pedro scene was just on the perimeter of the South Bay. So, that is part of the South Bay.
Yeah.
And can I ask you guys how Orange County kind of fits in with this whole thing? You have the Cuckoo's Nest and the Woodstock, the Golden Bear, places like that were, Radio City. I think that was Metallica's first gig.
Yeah.
So you have all these different places, and it's just like crazy that, I mean, even back then, the scenes were completely different from an Orange County scene to an LA crowd. Like those two crowds are so different. So can you give me some of the differences in between LA and Orange County back then?
Yeah, we played at Radio City a few times too. The difference to me with those clubs was the bookers and how they booked a show and how they developed a bill. They were smart and they would do bands that were all similar or in the same genre, right? Like we played at Radio City one time with a band called. What were they called? Remember those dudes? They're black guys, 4 black guys.
Oh, not Sound Barrier.
Sound Barrier. Did you know do you know who that band is?
Of course,
right.
Dude.
So Sound Barrier, they were badass players, man. These guys were jammers. But like them, like they would put us with them, or they put us with Savage Grace, or us with something that was a little more cock rocky, but still hard rock. So, but in LA, they started mixing things up, and the crowd would be disparate, if that makes sense. So the last gig we played at the Troubadour, they put us on the bill. We headlined, which was fantastic, but the opening band was a band called No Sugar. Now Google that. So they were basically a Quiet Riot knockoff. Candy striped mic stands and all that, man. Capizios, all that. So they had their crowd, and here we are with our crowd with the guy with the mohawk, right? And Sherman Jones was there that night. And it was just not good. This is a disparate crowd, and our people hated the opening band, and their people hated us. And that was the last gig we ever played there. And I told the booker at the time, I said, "You're blowing. This is not a good idea. this is just not good. Trust me, it's not going to turn out well. And she said, I want to try it. I want to see what happens. On a Saturday night.
Well, you know what? All four walls are still standing, so I guess that was good, you know?
So give me the story of how you guys met. What was the show that brought you together, or the
it was a
incident?
mutual friend.
So I'll start it and I'll let him continue because my memory is shit. But not really. Okay, so I met a guy named Vince Solomon. We called him Vinso.
Vinso.
He was the vocalist for Vermin for a while. In fact, that's kind of how I met these guys because I'd been hanging out with Vinso for a while. We had a couple mutual friends, and you know we would go to my buddy Joe's jam room. He had his grandmother converted her garage into like a little jam room. So there was a drum set. You know, everything was set up there. So we would go there and we'd kind of like rotate playing. You know, if you knew a song, you'd get up and jam, whatever. Well, so that's how I met Vince. So Vince and I started hanging out. And so Vince is like, oh, dude, I got an audition for a band called Vermin. Do you want to come with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I ended up going with him. You know, I didn't really, you know, interact with these guys, but that's how we met at this audition. And he got in the band. I don't know, I'm not sure why you guys got him in the band, but
he was the only one that wanted to do it.
You know what? He was, for what they were doing at the time, I think he was good enough. And but I'm glad he was good enough because, you know, that was 82.
83. Late
83-ish. Yeah. And I mean, him and I, of everybody, I think we really hit it off good. I think Greg was a little bit too scary for me at the time, I think. But yeah, I just hit it off with all of these guys. In fact, another fun fact, Sherman Jones's bass guitar, that Mockingbird, belonged to the original bass player of Vermin, Dean Coffey, who is now a brewer and actually brewed this particular beer right here at his brewery in Wisconsin.
I love these fun facts. Yeah. So let me branch off of here into a different territory. Radio stations. I would like to get some sort of a footing as to how much of these radio stations played into the overall scene, the KNACs, the K-Wests, the K-Rocks, any of these. What was kind of their role in projecting you guys into another realm, another market, as it were, to get new fans for the scene?
The only station that I remember, like our demo when we finally got vocals on it, got played on, was it Loyola and Marymount? Did they have a college radio station?
KXLU.
Yeah. So the KXLU was playing thrash metal and punk rock and stuff like that. And that's it. Before KNDC happened, which was, you know, I can't remember when that station came into existence.
I think KMET might have had like a local music hour or something like that, or you know, at like 2:00 in the morning or whatever it was. But I don't think they would have ever played anything like this. You know, I mean, they would have played like local bands, but it would have probably been more, you know, rock.
KROQ, it was all punk rock if they're going to do anything local.
Yeah.
Rodney Bingenheimer had his show, Rodney on the Rock, and he broke a lot of interesting new punk bands. I actually used to listen to his show all the time when I was a kid.
But yeah, outside of, you know, what he just said, so I can't remember what it was, but Cal State Long Beach had like a metal and punk type of show.
So it's college radio
back then. So yeah, college radio was actually pretty big back then because it was the only avenue that, you know, and once tape trading started and stuff like that, and that whole network of college DJs got particular things, you know, that's pretty much the only way that you would hear your stuff on the radio. But yeah, there wasn't really an avenue on, you know, regular radio. Obviously, satellite didn't exist at the time. It wasn't even thought of, I suppose. So there wasn't.
It's interesting. So not even in like the late 80s with like Manic Metal breaking new bands or any of this kind of
Well, okay,
like specialty shows or
well, so I thought that question was directed more towards him back in that. So yeah. I mean, hell, in my days with Dissenter, one of the first bands that I was in with Stu, my guitar player now, we had submitted some stuff to like like the manic metal hour and stuff like that. I never heard myself on it because I was never really up listening to the radio at that time of night. If I was up that time of night, I was either at a gig or getting late or passed out. Passed out. I keep going this way. I'm just gonna hold it in this hand. But by then, yeah, it was great. It was a local music, local bands. I mean, it was accessible, but we never really did anything like that because like what? So I went from Dissenter to Uncle Slam, and from Uncle Slam's like straight to Reverend. So, people did it for.
That's good, man. That's good. I like the stories, man. Real quick too, I noticed that Angela, you have your Johnny Cardenas t-shirt, a mutual friend of ours who unfortunately is no longer here. That was a huge kind of shock to me personally because I literally saw him like 4 months beforehand. That was probably the last time I got to see him, which was last year. Sorry, last year.
Mm-hmm.
And the last, so my story is, and I want to get your story of when like the kind of, your favorite kind of memory with Johnny and whatnot. And one of mine was the last time I saw him, and it was for Diego's of MX Machine. He was doing the Hood's Got Talent, where in Angela, you were a part of this too, where you play like two.
Can I interrupt you again? I'm sorry, I like to interrupt a lot. All the fucking cool bands got to play day two. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. All the fucking cool bands got to record fucking day two. All right. Other than that, yeah, continue on.
No comment on that. But what I was gonna say is we recorded on day two, and
Yes,
I believe that like it was so cool too because it was kind of right when in the middle of the pandemic. I hadn't seen a lot of people. And Johnny was there. Just randomly, he was just hanging out. He wanted to check out some of the bands and just hang like old times. And he watched basically what it was is the Hood's Got Talent. You played 2 songs, either 2 or 3 times. That you played it a couple times, whatever. They would pick that kind of the tightest one, and that's what the video was that was released and whatnot. And so Johnny was there. I was like, "Hey, what's going on, man?" He was just telling me that like he was going through some health stuff, and it was so good to see him. And so we played, and then after we all just kind of hung out, and that was some of my favorite times, going to Grill 'em All with him. So and whatnot. And I'm just curious for you, Angelo. Can you give me like one of your favorite memories with Johnny, and just like help me kind of document him and cement his legacy in something?
So, I met Johnny. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it was shortly after I joined Anger's Art. So that was 2006 or so. When did I play Seattle?
2009.
Okay, so it must have been about 2000. It was right after I left Heretic or Hyrax. So that was right about the time that I met him, because I didn't really know that whole group of people up in that area, and Steve and at the time Dave Chedrick, our drummer, who played guitar, William Restrom would play guitar, and so those, and Steve Gaines obviously introduced me to a lot of really cool people. Johnny just happened to be one of them. And it was at one of our local gigs. In fact, his band might have even played. I'm not even sure. but I just know that I met him, and he was like a super cool dude. You know, you don't exchange phone numbers anymore. You say, hey, what's your social media? You know, so I got his Johnny's Guitar Garage thing and followed him on it all the time. Loved his fucking quotes. Loved his hey motherfuckers. You know, it was a Metal Monday. It was a sexy Sunday. Yeah, he had all these fucking cool things. Dude, I loved fucking following him. Anyway, the guy who does the work on my guitar, he was like super backed up, and I needed some work done. And I'm like, fuck. I go, who can I get? Somebody. So I posted on Facebook. Hey, anybody local LA? You know a good guy for some guitar work, and a bunch of people. Dude, Johnny Cardenas. I'm like, oh, fuck, Johnny Cardenas. Yeah. I follow this dude.
Mm-hmm.
I called him up and said, dude, I told him what I wanted to do. Fuck, dude, he hooked it up, man. It's right
in the back down there. So,
there. It's right there. Anyway, he did a fantastic job. He rewired it, put new saddle, new electronics, new everything, and this thing fucking purrs like a bulldozer, man. And I just, dropping the guitar off. You don't just drop the guitar off. You sit there for 2 hours and you just talk. He's just had so much fucking music knowledge in his head. He was and a staple in the LA music, in the LA thrash, music family. I guess there really isn't a scene anymore. I guess we have to call it a family because, same with you, Tanner. I mean, you're part of that family, and we have occasional gigs in warehouses and dumpy clubs and stuff. It's what we have to do these days, but you know what? It's, we fight on and we forge forward. And Johnny was just that dude. Johnny was just that guy. He fucking was a big supporter of the scene, was a great musician and a good friend to a lot of people, because I cannot tell you how many posts, that were on his page when he passed away. Even people who I didn't know he was that bad. I mean, I knew that he had some health issues, but that was one thing he didn't do was burden people with that, because he was just spreading so much love and so much joy. So I don't have one particular memory. I just have a memory of him, and I hope he's missed by the metal community as much as he's missed, with our family.
Absolutely. Again, that was a big shock to wake up to that, because I literally just thought I saw him like a couple months ago.
You did? Yeah, you probably did. So yeah, it happened quick. And like I say, he was super, super quiet about it.
And the best part that I loved about him, real quick, before we get off of here and whatnot, is that one of the first times I met him, just super welcoming. That's not really it. Like, not a lot of people do that, especially here in LA and whatnot. So it was just super kind of awesome that somebody was, welcoming to everybody. Mm-hmm. Especially somebody from Orange County, because
yeah, we let you guys in from now and again. So
yeah, exactly. But my point is, the first kind of moments that it was like we had known each other for years. He was that kind of person to me, and I'm sure he was like that to a lot of people. It was like the first time you met him, it was like hugs all around and just super cool. And then the next time we got to, hang out and whatnot, it was just all talking about music. And you're right, Angela, he was kind of like an encyclopedia, almost kind of like what me and you and John over here are of just music in general. So, a huge rest in peace to Johnny. And I wanted to play some sort of tribute to him, and I want to thank you guys for coming on the show and hanging and telling some stories and whatnot. But Angelo and John, what do you guys have coming up as far as music projects go? Are you working on anything behind the scenes? Like, is there a Vermin box set coming out or fucking
we had high hopes of recording about 4 years ago or so, and just too tough to wrangle everybody. You know, some of the other guys still at that time had smaller kids, school age kids, and wives, and that didn't dig them playing in the band anymore. You know, all that stuff. There's just too much of that going on.
And plus the distance. You were in Seattle.
I lived in Seattle.
Greg's out in BFE. Tony's in Florida now.
Yeah. So everybody
just moved to Arizona. So
everybody was spread apart, and it was just logistically. You know, we got together at Sideshow and had some great rehearsals and some great jams.
Hell, we even did a show at
we played that show at
the
Metal Summit a couple of years ago. But you know, when you're young, you can that motivation can be everything. It can be 99% of your life is that. And now, when you got responsibilities, like I own my own business, I had that going on. You got all this shit going on. It's so hard, you know. You think it'd be easier because you're more like you got your shit together now and you got the money to do it, but it turned out to be the complete opposite. So we couldn't get together and record anything. So that's a drag. So nothing on that front from me. I'm currently retired from music, more or less. I was in 3 bands before COVID hit up in Seattle, 2 original bands and a tribute band. And COVID came along, put the brakes on all that, and I just said I'm done. So no more. You can listen to my last project, Granite Waves, on Spotify.
There you go, Angelo. What do you have coming up, sir? Any music projects?
Let's see. So we're currently in the recording process. We were talking the other night. We've got a 3-song demo, and you're probably wondering why a demo? Why not just a recording or a record? We're shopping for potentially a new label, and I probably shouldn't say it like that, but we're signed to Dissonance, but we're not under contract at the moment. So, seeing as if we have to submit a demo to them, we might as well submit a demo to a few other people.
Okay, so you're putting out feelers now.
I'm sorry?
So you're putting out feelers now is pretty much what it is.
Sort of. You know, like I say, we have a fallback. You know, I think your next record's always your best record. But this will be our 3rd record back. You know, since the band reformed in 2011, and we've had a chance to grow as a band, you know, especially since Stu has joined us. And our writing is, you know, like, it's almost like finishing each other's sentences type of thing, you know? Like, I can come up with a riff and fucking Stu or Brian can come up with the follow-up transition into the verse or the chorus or whatever, you know? So that's kind of how we're working now, and it's a lot of fun. And I think the music's kind of, it's grown up, but it's still a little rebellious, you know. It's still got that fucking punk rock kid attitude in him. I'm excited. I wish I could have played it for you the other night when we saw each other. But it was loud, it was just, it wasn't the right time. But I'd like to get together with you personally and let you hear some of it. So that's it. And then we're going to be playing the finish the sentence for me.
We get the. Are you talking about
Rage of Armageddon 6 in Brooklyn, New York, June 18th. So Saturday, June 18th. It's a 2-day festival. Friday and Saturday. We're playing night 2 with some killer bands. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. But that's it. And after we're done with that, it's back home and back to back in the studio, and just we want to get all the songs recorded. We want to get them all while they're fresh, while they're, because we've just been working on nothing but those. We haven't been, we actually stopped that so we could put a live set together, for the gig. But outside of that, we've been playing like 12 songs over and over and over and over and over. But you know what? Those 12 songs are tight as fuck. And we're ready. We're ready for round 3.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that Sean's going to now be on a record finally. That's going to come out.
Yes, exactly.
Finally.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, right?
But gentlemen, I want to thank you guys again for giving me a few minutes of your time here and tell some great stories and just hang with me for a few. So hopefully we can do it again soon. But another episode of Poppitt's Corner, guys. We're out of here.
Dude,
cheers.
Brother.